So we both read this article by Katherine D, friend of the pod. She was on a couple episodes ago. Check that out. So she has this article about how culture is not stuck. I've written about how culture is stuck and how AI is kind of like making it a zombie culture at some level. So I have mixed feelings about this. I'm very curious to get your thoughts on this topic. But Catherine D's argument is that we see music and literature and movies all like not going anywhere. We have the same process and it's just different textures, but it's not progressing. And at the same time, they're kind of like ossifying in the same way that maybe like the opera ossified or theater, like musical theater, isn't going anywhere. Like it's there, it's not dead. People still go to the theater, but it's not new at all. And like what's happening with art, maybe nothing. She has this argument though that we are just in this time period when we don't recognize the new art forms being created as art forms, and that's why we think it's stuck. And so she lays out three different types of art forms that are now new. She writes that the internet personality as art is art. And so this is a quote from her. The social media personality is one example of a new form. She gives a list of some people who are doing this. These people, she writes, are continuous works of expression, not quite performance art, but something like it. So that's one. She also names TikTok sketch comedy as kind of like a new form of art, and also memes as art, about what she writes. Much has been said about memes as art and the collective labor and imagination that goes into their creation, but it extends further than that. It's not just memes. Creating mood boards on Pinterest or curating aesthetics on TikTok are evolving art forms too. Very fascinating. No, I want to get your thoughts on this.
I've been writing and thinking about this for a while. Yeah. I saw that you went back and you liked the Substack post I wrote about like Gutenberg and yeah,
Yeah, very related. Yeah.
very related. I like to be honest, you should be really wary of people who don't call something art or who say that's not art. Like
Hmm.
history has taught us that like almost every time we've stuck our noses up at like some interesting thing happening creatively in our society, we've been wrong. The internet itself was a trend that moms were like, "Oh my God, Mark Zuckerberg's in his basement working on code, wasting his time," you know. So I think to some degree I really agree with Catherine D. It's funny. I was listening to an interview recently with I think his name's John Landgraf. He's an executive at FX,
Hmm.
and he was being interviewed, and he's like in his 60s, and he's recently helped push he's helped create the Shogun and the Bear, or Shogun and the
Hmm.
Bear, like
Oh,
both
okay.
those really popular shows, and they won a ton of Emmys.
Yeah.
And the interviewer's like, what are you optimistic about our culture? Like, are you on YouTube? And like, is YouTube going to take over? And he had a really good answer, and he said like, the kind of algorithmic stuff that's on YouTube and on social media, it's told from a first person perspective. It's I. And that's fundamentally different from what film and TV offered for most of his life,
Hmm.
and like kind of in these legacy institutions, which is like a collective story. So I think the I forms like social media and the TikToks and the YouTubes can live side by side with the more like we forms of traditional media like film and TV. Um, I generally think that monolithic cultural institutions should not like exist, and TV and film was a huge monolith
Hmm.
of culture. And like I don't have a phrase for this. Maybe it's like polyliths, which is kind of clunky, but instead of having like one monolithic centralized factory of culture like LA where we produce TV and film and everyone goes and watches it at Thursday at 8 p.m. and then quotes it the next day and talks about it, there's a more distributed polylithic culture. But I think they can exist side by side, and I think that it does need to happen in some degree where we're all consuming the same things and we can have a conversation about it, or else I think we do lose something.
Hmm.
That makes sense.
It totally does. Yeah, I think that's. I think I agree with all that. I want to getting back a little bit to Catherine's article, I want to poke a little bit at this idea of the internet personality as art, because I do think that there is a difference between, I mean, I don't know, I don't know exactly how to phrase this, but someone just like acting and putting themselves out there is kind of different from creating a product. Or maybe
Yeah.
it's not, but it strikes me as different because at the end, like most art is something that you can kind of like see holistically and package and purchase and then reference in a specific sort of way. And I know I'm being like reductionist here because, you know, again, like I did have a philosophy of art class in undergrad, and I do know you cannot define art. It's one of those terms you can't define. Is basket weaving art or is that just a craft? Who the fuck knows? Like, if philosophers argue about this, right? But like, I think that like internet personalities, I don't know if I want to call that the same thing in like put that in the same bucket as like a novel. I just don't know if I want to. It doesn't seem like a product in a sense. It seems, yeah, go ahead.
I think it doesn't seem like a high cultural watermark.
Hmm.
Like when we go back and we look at the year 2020, when it's like 2200, are we gonna what are the things that are gonna be, the high culture watermarks of our time? Will it be TikToks? I mean, it's probably gonna be movies still, right? Like big films like Jordan Peele and like I mean, I don't know. I sort of agree with you. I don't know if we're saying the same thing, but I think that like it's hard to imagine these like bite-sized art forms, even if we
The
grant them
fact that I
arts.
wasn't able to,
Yeah,
yeah, I was gonna say the fact that I can't make a really strong argument against it, at least not at the moment, makes me want to think that like maybe Catherine's right and I should just like give up and call it an art form. It'd be so much
well, I
easier
mean,
just to do
that's
that. Fine, let it in or whatever. But yeah, like I think that man, so it's like one of the purposes of art, one of the like the reasons that we do it and we consider it an important endeavor is that it creates like an anthem, as it were. Like so when we have anthems, we reference that, and through referencing that, like life itself becomes more rich. And that's why like people reference the Matrix because it's in itself like an archetype of a thing that we can now play off of and reference. I don't know if internet personalities necessarily play that role in that like one of these people is an archetype and that other people can like play off of that and then we reference it in the way of like, oh, you're doing a Don Quixote, or maybe you can. Maybe you can. I don't know. Again, I'm kind of talking myself out of my own argument.
so
Um,
yeah, John Landgraf, I think that's his name. The FX executive goes, people used to watch a TV show and then just day to day life, they used to quote TV shows and movies.
yeah.
Now they quote memes.
Hmm.
That's the currency of our culture. Um, is that something, a large enough narrative like the Matrix, that we could all sort of like find richness in? I just don't think it's as monolithic anymore, right? I Grumpy Cat is a story, and a lot of people know about it. And
Let me put it this
Brat,
way. No, I have a thought. I'm sorry, so sorry to interrupt you before I lose this. I have a thought. Okay, so most people like streamers. Let's just take streamers, right? They sit at their computer and they just talk all day. And Catherine wants to consider that a work of art, like that itself. She wants like Destiny. She wants to say is a work of art, internet personality as art. But to me, I want to argue, at least try to present this argument, that that's the same thing as saying that like someone right now in a cubicle working a desk job, filling out paperwork, is a work of art. It's like office cubicle worker as work of art. And it's not like the shit that the cubicle worker is filling out and like that's not the product. It's him sitting there. If there were a camera on him, he would be the work of art. It's a very like I know that like actually Andy Warhol did this as a gimmick, right? And so he put a camera on the Empire State Building, called it Empire, and it was like a 3 hour long thing where nothing happens. It just looks at the Empire State Building. That's kind of like what this is. And we're like it's kind of a gimmick, and it's just in the same way that Andy Warhol's movie was a gimmick, and that's maybe all that it is, right? Just the fact that it's being documented doesn't necessarily make it any sort of a important thing
I guess you could.
artistically.
Now we're getting into like the nuts and bolts of like philosophy of art, but you could argue that if people connect to it and it gains a following and some traction, there's something there. Like I don't think people just pay attention to boring shit that doesn't like provoke something interesting in people.
Mhm.
I don't know. Is Hawk Tuah girl like an artist? Like that's a moment. She captured a feeling, and people thought it was really funny, and now she's run away with it and has her own podcast and has
She's
exploded.
got like
But
her own empire. Yeah.
she does like, and that was such a quick turnaround. Like I don't know, man. Like I think that as soon as we get into this like territory of what art is and where it's sacred and where it's not, we start to like close our minds to what is cool and what is interesting. I went
Would
into
it
film.
make sense? Because one of the theories of art, one of the actual theories of art, is that like once it's in a museum, it's art. So like once society determines that it's art, it's art. Some philosophers like they write papers on this, and I think that that's true. If we were collectively just to consider it art by this theory, then it would be art. And so presumably we could be at a time 50 years from now or whatever where you walk into the Met and you step into the realm where you're just in the presence of internet personalities and you get to experience the art like that and like then it is art or something like that. I
Can
don't
I
know. Yeah.
can I give you like just a really quick concrete case
Yeah.
of like maybe this is a good border case? Do you know who Jordan Howlett is?
No, I don't think so.
He's Jordan the Stallion is his handle on like socials, but basically he's famous for like standing in the mirror with his phone and then he goes like, "Come here," and like he has all of these like rants. Then he's funny. He kind of like talks like really quickly and like cleverly about random things and reacts to videos and products. And I think that's a format, that's a genre he sort of created where he's standing in the mirror with his phone and just going off of these like going off on these tangents that are really entertaining, almost like a stand-up comic. And that's the format. Man in front of the mirror, phone in front of his hand, and every time he goes, "Come here," and the camera punches in as if you're coming closer. And I'm like, that's the only thing binding all of his work. And he's huge. He's gotten like Danny Glover or Donald Glover on his on his social media and all these big personalities. He has deals, he has products, he sponsors. He is an empire, and he's just
I'll have
found
to check
these
that
like
out. That sounds fascinating. You know what that reminds me of? Do you know the world's best artist?
no.
Okay, so if you Google, I might be getting that slightly wrong, but something to the effect of, if you Google the world's best artist, this dude comes up who just like he got the URL and like made a brand out of being the world's best artist just because like of SEO. He made himself the world's best artist. That's his name,
Yeah.
and he ended up making his own kind of like empire around this idea of just like based on like memes and virability and big personalities online, he made his own kind of like empire of art production, Andy Warhol style. And that to me is kind of fascinating, is just like playing off modern technology to effectively create, if not new genres of art, maybe even like a self-mockery genre of art or something like that. But using technology to play with and to some degree press forward art to me is very fascinating.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's what artists have to do. They're the engine for new creative things, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. All right. With that, I think I should better wrap it up, Noam. Thanks for coming on the show, and let everyone know what you're up to now and how to check you out.
yeah. I appreciate the discussion. I know, I mean, this is such high level stuff. I never get to think about art and the work I do from this perspective, but it's nice. Yeah, so I'm working on a few documentaries. One is about like a comedy duo, a mother and son, who do comedy together, and we're planning on shooting in December. And I might go to China for that because
Whoa,
um,
cool.
they have a Chinese background. I'm doing a documentary on an artist who's out in Joshua Tree, and he pours chemicals and salts that he forages onto canvas to create these like kind of chemical reactions. He's really an alchemist. So it's documentary short on him. And I'm also writing for my sci-fi trilogy, which I've called Wasteland, which I'm really excited about. Maybe we can talk about someday. But that's kind of what's on the docket for me.
Awesome. And are you mostly on Instagram, or what's the primary place to check you out?
Yeah, Instagram, where I do my performance art.
Great. Okay. That sounds great. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for coming on, Noam. Really appreciate it.